Hi guys, this is Multiple Stiltskin here, and I'm going to do a brand new Let's Play of Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup. We're playing version 0.18, which is the latest stable version right now. And I'm going to do a Minotaur Fighter, because that's kind of what a lot of people will recommend when you're just starting off with the game. It's one of the more straightforward things that you can do. It's going to be a pretty powerful way to start out. So we're a Minotaur Fighter here. We get to choose what weapon we want to. I'm just going to go with a flail. Maces and flails are a pretty solid choice. They don't have anything too unique about them, like an axe would cleave. Um, but you have a lot of different options for kinds of weapons. Let's not get into that though. Right now, let's look at our skills. We just started here, and before we even do anything, we want to press M to pull up the skill screen. And by default, you'll see I kind of already turned this on almost with just muscle memory before I started explaining things. But you'll see basically that you have a lot of different skills, and you can kind of put the percentage of experience you want into specific skills instead of just letting it by default in auto mode. It'll kind of put stuff, wherever it is that you've been using it. So instead of letting the game decide like this, it's kind of arbitrary, we can actually just tell it where we want the experience to go. And starting off, more or less with every class, you want to level up the skill that you use to kill things. And for us right now, that's maces and flails. Fighting is a little bit of a boost to attacking, but mostly it's for bonus health. And right now we really just want to be able to murder things. So we're going to do maces and flails. If we press I, we can see our inventory. The background is basically what decides the kind of equipment that you start with. Since we're a fighter, we got a flail, which is a pretty decent weapon. We also started with some scale mail armor and a shield and a potion of might. So we're gonna go ahead and start moving. If you press lowercase o, it will auto explore until you find something interesting. So like here, we just found 25 arrows on the ground, so it went ahead and stopped. So I'll just press it again. We picked up a potion. The game does also auto pick up by default. You can change options and mess around with things, but it's usually pretty good to just leave it how it is until you start to get a feel for the game and how you like it. So that's what I'm going to do right now. We ran into a rat, which is our first enemy. Now you might be tempted when you run into an enemy to just move forward at the enemy. But the problem with that is that in the time you took to move forward, then it's his turn and he gets to hit you. So instead of moving to him, we're just going to press S. And you can bind it to different places, but that'll stand still. And then we're just going to press tab, and that'll attack the closest guy to us. You can also move in the direction of the enemy, and that's going to be important when you're in fights with more than one guy and when you want to be a little more careful with your positioning. But for fighting a rat, you can usually press tab, especially if you're a Minotaur fighter. So we'll keep auto exploring. If you have the game downloaded, then you'll actually see your guy move around. Since I'm playing on web tiles here, it'll just kind of put me there because it uses less power and stuff for the server. Here's a little goblin, so we'll just attack him a little bit and keep on going. You'll notice now that we've picked up a couple potions and 2 of the same kind of scroll. And potions aren't going to be identified for you by default. So right now we don't really know what these do. We could identify them by just drinking them, but that might be kind of dangerous. The same thing kind of goes for scrolls, although it's typically a little safer to read an unidentified scroll than to quaff an unidentified potion. So since I have 2 of these, that means even if I use one now and I don't need it, I'll still know what the other one does, and maybe it'll be really useful. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to press R for read, and then I'm just going to press G to select that scroll. And it looks like that was identify, which is one of the more common ones. So now I can identify what this potion does. And it looks like it's actually heal wounds, which is a really good potion to have identified early on. Now, if I'm about to die, I know I can safely drink that potion, and I'll be basically back to full health. Right now in the early game, heal wounds is going to heal me a lot. We went ahead and identified the other one, Ambrosia is a potion that will confuse you, which is bad, but you regenerate very quickly while that's happening, so it's not necessarily a terrible thing. Let's keep on killing. Okay, so now we can see more than one guy at once. And most of the time you want to kind of play it safe, even if they seem like really weak guys, and move to a place where only one thing can attack you at a time. And so that was pretty easy right here. We just went into this little hallway, and now we can just attack them and wait for them to come to us. We never really want to go to them. That's kind of like rule 101 for melee combat. You either run away and let them come to you, or stand where you are and let them come to you. But almost never would you want to approach them. You can press 5 to just wait until your guy is rested and healed and all that, and that's usually a good idea before you start exploring too. This is a bat. These guys can be kind of annoying because they actually move really fast. So you'll see if I wait just one turn, he's already next to me. They can move like 3 spaces and attack in the same turn. And so I like to just wait and let them come to me and hit them. If I hadn't killed him there, he would have like started darting all around the place. And so sometimes it's actually better to walk away from a bat than to stand still, because then he'll end up next to you when your turn starts and you can actually hit him. There's a shield, but we already have one. And there's a kobold, let's kill him. So in the first level of the dungeon, you're usually not going to find anything that scary, especially if you're a Minotaur, which I should say your race will kind of dictate what skills you're good at, which really just means you can level them up more quickly. But it's a very big difference. So you'll notice that for a Minotaur, pretty much every weapon skill and fighting are +2, which is really good. That means Minotaurs learn those skills very quickly. Same thing goes for armor and shields, and they're also pretty good at dodging, just not quite as good as they are at other stuff. So Minotaurs are great at pretty much everything involving melee and ranged weapon combat. Throwing, they only have a 0, but you know, it's still pretty good. And if we had like a bow or something, then we would actually see what that skill aptitude was for that too in this screen. Anyway, Minotaurs can't wear helmets like this one we just found on the ground because they have some kind of mutations. We might as well talk about that too. So the different races really make a much bigger difference than the class that you pick. The class really just determines your starting gear and your skills that you start off with. But your race is what determines what skills you're good at. And in the case of a Minotaur, you get some weird stuff. So in this case, we have a pair of horns on our head, and we reflexively headbutt those who attack in melee. So horns just means that when you attack something in melee, you have a pretty good chance of also headbutting them and just doing one extra attack. So one more chance to hit, do a little bit more damage. And Minotaurs are unique in that they can actually get a headbutt attack off in response to being hit by an enemy. So just more free attacks. It's pretty strong. We just picked up a magic ring, and we have a scroll of identify, so we're going to want to use that. Sometimes rings can actually be bad things. This particular one is a good thing, sustain attributes. It's not really that helpful to us right now because there are very few things at this point in the game that would drain our stats, and all it really does is protect us from stat drain. But, you know, it's better than nothing, I guess, so we might as well put it on. There's a dart slug. He's not actually that strong, he just has a ranged attack. Just murder all these guys. When you're over a corpse, you can press C, and that will chop them up and butcher them so that you can get their chunks of flesh and then eat them. Most races, though, can only eat raw flesh if they're hungry, because raw flesh is really gross. And you'll want to try to eat chunks as much as you can instead of like this bread ration that we started with, because if you run out of food, that's pretty bad. Although it almost never happens. It's not really a real concern for most classes. Like, we're not using spells or berserking right now, so food is kind of an afterthought. But it is important to know that you should be mostly eating chunks when possible, which means you should just wait till you're hungry and then eat them. They will go bad, but you know, everything that you kill, more or less, is a source of a chunk. We got a couple more scrolls, so I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and use them, see what they are. A random uselessness scroll, and that was remove curse, and it's pretty self-explanatory what that does. If you had a curse item, it would get rid of the curse. Curses just mean that you cannot unequip it. So if I had a cursed flail, I had to keep using that flail until I can remove the curse. We got another scroll of identify, and you'll notice I'm just kind of burning through those. Ooh, and we found a potion of mutation. You typically want to get benefits immediately instead of holding out for possible future benefits, because you kind of snowball. So the stronger you get earlier on, just the better things are going to go for you. And it's good to know what consumables you have. And so in this case, you'll see potions of mutation is kind of a purple color. That's because it's not necessarily a good thing. Like heal wounds is yellow because that's a really good potion. Might and ambrosia are white because they're pretty useful. Mutation is risky. You could get good mutations, but you could also get some really bad ones. Sometimes I like to just drink them anyway and see what happens, especially early on in the game if I'm not that invested in the character. But I think right now I'm going to do the prudent thing and not drink them. But we might as well hold on to them. You never know when you might want to mutate yourself. If you're weird like me anyway. So we just leveled up. Every third level, so level 3 and then 6 and so on, you get to choose a stat to increase. And depending on your race, you'll also get stat increases just kind of automatically. But these are the ones we get to choose. So you'll see at the top right of the screen, over here, I have 20 strength, 5 intelligence, and 9 dexterity. Strength is used for a lot of different things, but it's mostly relevant for armor and for how much damage you do in melee. Intelligence is purely for spell casting, and dexterity is related to your accuracy in melee combat and your dodging and other things like that. Sometimes it's good to increase your intelligence even if you're a fighter Minotaur like I am right now, because later on there are things that can drain your stats, and if your stats get to 0, that's actually really bad. It can like stun you in the middle of combat, all kinds of things. So I think though for now I'm still just going to increase strength because I'd rather get an immediate benefit. Later on I might think about increasing intelligence. And that'll also make it easier to cast spells if I ever decide to add that. Minotaurs aren't very good at spells, but it's still sometimes useful to pick up stuff like blink and utility spells like that. This is a snake here. These are one of the more deadly enemies that you'll run into in the early game because they can poison you. For a Minotaur fighter, a snake is usually not going to be that scary unless you just have bad luck. But for a lot of classes, well, adders I guess they're called now. Back in the day they were called snakes. Now they're adders. They're not really that big of a threat to a Minotaur fighter. You can take them out pretty easily. We can look at our experience and you'll see that my maces and flails has gone up a pretty good amount, but we're going to stick with that for a while. If we look in our inventory and then press A to look at the flail, you'll see that your minimum attack delay right here gets to 0.7, which is how much time it takes to swing it basically. And you don't get to that until you get skill level 14, which means we want to pretty much get to 14 as fast as we can. We might throw in a little bit of armor and shields or something else, but this is going to let us attack a lot faster and get all the other benefits of increasing the weapon skill, like better damage, better accuracy, that kind of stuff. But the minimum delay is the most important part because we'll be attacking almost twice as fast as we are now. It might not look like the time is a thing because it looks like we're taking turns, right? But if you look over here next to time, you see this little in parentheses it says 1.0. That's how much time my last action just took, and that's because I moved, which pretty much always takes 1.0 unless you're like hasted or slowed or you're a weird race like a Naga. But you'll notice when I attack this adder, it says 1.4. And that's because my attack speed is not at the minimum delay yet, and my shield is actually slowing down my attack speed too. So you'll notice that it's actually changing a little bit. So there is an element of randomness to it, but that's related to your shield penalty. That's not related to the maces and flails skill. So if I had a higher shield skill at 15, then I wouldn't have that penalty at all. My attack speed would be consistent every time. But since I don't, then the shield is going to kind of require me to make a dice check basically when I attack, and it'll slow me down by an amount, related to how well I do on that check. But that's all kind of invisible, happening behind the scenes. The important thing to know is that even though it is kind of a turn-based thing, if I take a really long time to swing, then my enemies might get multiple turns. So it makes a really big difference. It's important to understand. Just keeping on here. We still don't have any scrolls to try out or identify more potions with. And it's usually a pretty bad idea to identify potions by drinking them, unless you really have to, like you're about to die. So we're gonna not do that. Once you've identified some of the more important ones, then it's a little safer. So like the fact that I ID'd mutation is actually a really good thing, because now I don't have to worry about any other potions being mutation potions. But there's still really good potions like cure mutation that I want to not waste. It's a lot better to use an ID scroll than a cure mutation potion when you don't need it, because those are pretty rare, and later on we might pick up some bad mutations. Here we just ran into our first unique, Natasha, Servant of Life and Death. She's a Felid. So here's a cool thing you can do. If you press Shift X, then you can start using your kind of arrow keys to move around, and we can actually hover over Natasha here and press V, and we can look at her. So there's some flavor text to go with her, and it'll also tell us what her stats are like. So she doesn't have really any armor at all. Her evasion's not too bad. She doesn't have very good magic resistance. The fact that it says she looks dangerous is based on our level and her hit dice. So that means that she's not going to be super safe for us to kill, but it doesn't say like extremely dangerous, so that's a good sign. It'll tell you everything else you need to know about her. She covers ground quickly, which means she moves faster than we do. It'll even tell us what spells she has, and if we press A here for Magic Dart, it'll even tell us exactly what that does. And you'll see that next to slow, it says 50%. That's her chance of successfully slowing us when she casts that spell. So this is pretty much everything that we need to know about her. We don't even really have to go to the wiki. The wiki does have descriptions of all the uniques, and so it can be nice to look stuff up. Sometimes people will have tips for you on fighting them. But if you don't want to leave the game, you like to just go with the flow of it, you can still get all of that info. It's pretty cool. You'll see she has a little imp with like a purple symbol next to him. That's because he's summoned, so he's not really worth any experience, and when I kill Natasha, he'll go away. So that means that I don't really want to worry about him at all. I just want to murder Natasha as quickly as I can. She's actually doing a lot of damage to us, along with her imps. But I know just from past experience and from looking at her that she doesn't have very much health or armor. So I'm just going to risk it and keep trying to kill her. And you'll see that she just died. Natasha's kind of unique in that you actually have to kill her more than once because she's a Felid. That's a race you can actually play, and they collect multiple lives. And so she has the same deal. She has multiple lives. And we might run into her again on this level. In fact, we probably will. And we'll have to kill her again. But that's fine. We just got an unidentified amulet. And these can be bad to put on because there's like amulets of inaccuracy that can be cursed. Other things that you might not want. But usually amulets, I'd say, are safer than rings to put on. Like a cursed ring of teleportation is really bad, especially in the early game. But really, it's never good. But an amulet of accuracy, like this one that we just now put on, it's not great. The chance of that was actually not too high. I was willing to take the risk. Didn't work out, though. But anyway, we should still be fine. Even with this amulet that's hurting our accuracy, we're a Minotaur Fighter. We can probably handle it. Although I should say that I'm not going to claim that we'll definitely win this game. I have around like a 7.5% win rate. So that means there's actually a very good chance that I won't win. Although Minotaur Fighter is an easier combo than I usually play. Even so, we'll probably die. So that's fine. You can expect that. But in the meantime, we'll learn some stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here, but thank you for watching, and I hope this was helpful. If you have questions about anything, if you want to see anything, if you want to give me advice, because I'm not perfect, feel free to leave a comment. And thanks for watching again. Take care, guys.